Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their circumstances. They change jobs, change cities, change partners, change routines. And yet the pressure follows them everywhere because the pressure was never coming from outside. It was always coming from inside. The stress that is grinding you down right now is not caused by your workload, your finances, your relationships, or the relentless pace of the world you live in. Those things are real and they are genuinely difficult. But the reason they are breaking you is not because they are hard. It is because nobody ever gave you a complete, honest, practical system for building a mind that does not break. This session from Brainpower Audiobooks is here to change that permanently. Welcome to Stress Mastery Blueprint, not a collection of quick tips, not a weekend motivational experience you forget by Tuesday. This is a rigorous, research-grounded, deeply human guide to building what we might call the invisible architecture of a life that holds. The inner structure of resilience, stress mastery, a genuinely positive mindset, and mental toughness that endures under sustained, real-world pressure. This session is for anyone who has ever felt crushed by demands they cannot escape. Anyone who has watched their own performance deteriorate under pressure they could not manage. Anyone who suspects they are capable of far more than their current stress levels allow. That includes nurses and teachers and parents and athletes and caregivers and artists and students and anyone else living in a world that does not slow down on request. Every strategy in this session is practical. Every technique is research-backed. Every word has been chosen to help you create your Ironmind and make it permanent. By the time you finish this session, you will have 4 things you did not have before: a concrete blueprint for building genuine resilience from the ground up, a toolkit of the most effective stress management techniques that exist, a scientific understanding of how to cultivate a positive mindset that is not naive but is genuinely powerful, and a complete framework for developing the mental toughness that allows you to perform at your best precisely when everything around you is most difficult. Each of these is learnable. Each of these is trainable. And each of these will compound in value the longer you practice them. The information in this session is intended for educational and informational purposes. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy and relevance, the responsibility for any actions you take based on what you hear rests with you. That is how it should be. You are the one doing the building. So let us begin. Chapter 1: Building Your Resilience Blueprint. Life does not distribute difficulty evenly. Some seasons are genuinely devastating. A diagnosis, a loss, a failure so complete it reorders your sense of who you are. But here is what the research on human resilience has found consistently across decades of study. The defining variable in how those experiences end is almost never the severity of what happened. It is the internal infrastructure the person had or lacked when it arrived. The same event that destroys one person becomes the turning point in another person's story. The difference is not luck, it is not genetics, it is not privilege. It is a trained, developed, deliberately built capacity called resilience, and it is available to you. Resilience is not about being tough in the crude sense. It is not about pretending things do not hurt or forcing positivity in the face of genuine pain or silently absorbing damage without complaint. Dr. Angela Duckworth, the psychologist whose landmark work on grit and perseverance has reshaped how researchers think about human performance, defines resilience as the ability to persist in the face of challenges and to bounce back from adversity. That definition is deceptively clean. Unpack it and you find something profound. The capacity to persist does not require the absence of suffering. It requires the presence of a particular relationship with suffering. One that neither collapses into it nor pretends it away, but moves through it, learns from it, and emerges on the other side changed in a useful direction. The research makes the stakes clear. People with higher psychological resilience navigate uncertainty more effectively, learn from setbacks rather than being defined by them, manage the stress of sustained difficulty without the compounding damage of burnout, adapt to change with greater speed and less internal cost, and demonstrate a quality of presence and leadership in their relationships that lower resilience individuals simply cannot sustain. These are not qualities reserved for a particular profession or personality type. They are outcomes of deliberate practice, available to anyone willing to build the infrastructure. Here is the reality of the world you live in. Stress is endemic. Difficulty is not an anomaly. Research consistently shows that the majority of working adults, across virtually every profession and context, report feeling overwhelmed by their responsibilities a significant proportion of the time. Chronic stress, when left unmanaged, produces a cascade of consequences that extend far beyond discomfort. It increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, elevates rates of anxiety and depression, and generates a sustained burnout that is not simply tiredness but a genuine erosion of motivation, identity, and capacity. The pressure you feel is real. The question is not whether you will face it. The question is whether you have built the internal architecture to handle it without being diminished by it. That architecture begins with your resilience blueprint. Your blueprint has 5 core components. Each one is concrete, each one is trainable, and each one reinforces all the others. The first is the mindset shift. This is the foundation on which everything else rests, and it begins with a single insight that has been validated across decades of research by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. Your abilities and intelligence are not fixed at birth. They are developed through effort, learning, and the willingness to sit with difficulty long enough for growth to occur. This is called a growth mindset, and it is not a platitude. It is a neurologically accurate description of how human capability actually develops. The brain is physically changed by experience. Skills that feel impossible become automatic with practice. Understanding this at a cellular level changes your relationship to failure. If your abilities are fixed, failure is a verdict. If your abilities are developable, failure is data. One of these orientations shuts you down, the other opens every door you thought was closed. Let go of the demand for perfection and replace it with a commitment to continuous forward motion. Progress, not perfection, is the engine of a life well built. The second component is cognitive reframing. Every event that happens to you is followed immediately by a story your mind constructs about what it means. That story, not the event itself, is what determines how you respond. Two people experience the same setback. One person's story is, "I am not good enough for this." The other person's story is, "This revealed something I need to learn." Those two stories produce completely different emotional states, completely different decisions, and ultimately completely different lives. Cognitive reframing is the practice of deliberately examining the story your mind tells and asking whether it is the most accurate, useful, and complete version of reality available. When a difficult event occurs, identify the situation clearly. Notice the thoughts that arise automatically. Challenge those thoughts by asking whether they are entirely accurate, whether you are catastrophizing, whether another interpretation is equally valid or more useful. Then consciously reframe the situation in a way that is balanced, honest, and actionable. This is not about lying to yourself. It is about recognizing that your initial interpretation is rarely the only one available and that choosing a more useful interpretation is a form of intelligence, not denial. The third component is goal realignment. Life rarely cooperates with the plans you make. Setbacks, detours, and forced pivots are not signs that you are doing it wrong. They are simply the nature of pursuing meaningful goals in a complex and unpredictable world. The skill is not in planning so well that nothing unexpected happens. The skill is in being able to reassess and realign your direction without losing your sense of purpose. The SMART framework, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, provides a reliable structure for that process. When something disrupts your trajectory, revisit your goals through this lens with fresh, honest eyes. You may need to adjust your timeline, redefine what success looks like in this new reality, or pivot to a different approach entirely. That is not failure. That is the flexibility that separates people who eventually reach meaningful outcomes from people who get permanently stuck on the version of the plan that did not survive contact with the real world. The fourth component is building a support network. Human beings are not designed for isolation. The idea that resilience means going it alone is one of the most damaging myths in modern culture. Every study on resilience that has ever been conducted, across cultures and contexts and demographics, finds the same result. Connection is protective. Surrounding yourself with the right people significantly increases your capacity to bounce back from difficulty, because you are drawing on a larger reservoir of experience, perspective, and encouragement than you could generate alone. This means seeking out mentors who have navigated similar difficulties and survived them with their integrity intact. It means building peer relationships with people who understand the specific pressures of your world. It means cultivating personal relationships that remind you of your worth as a human being beyond your current performance metrics. And it means being willing to ask for help, which is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of knowing how resilience actually works. The fifth component is developing healthy habits. The connection between your physical state and your mental capacity is not metaphorical, it is physiological. The sleep deprivation degrades decision-making in ways that are indistinguishable from alcohol intoxication. Regular exercise changes the brain structure in ways that increase emotional regulation. Poor nutrition depletes the neurochemical resources your mind requires to manage stress. Chronic sedentariness increases cortisol levels that make everything harder. Your body is not separate from your resilience. It is the substrate on which your resilience either grows or erodes. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, and mindfulness practices are not luxuries for when life gets easier. They are the exact conditions under which your capacity to handle difficulty is either being built or being consumed. Two lives make these principles concrete. Ariana Huffington wrote her first manuscript and sent it to publishers. They said no. Then she sent it again. They said no again. She sent it to 36 publishers in total. 36 consecutive doors closed. Most people facing rejection at that scale would have concluded that the message was clear and moved on to something else. Huffington did not. She persisted, kept refining her work, and eventually not only became a best-selling author but went on to build the Huffington Post into one of the most influential media platforms in modern history. The 36 rejections did not derail her story. They became the evidence base for the mindset that built it. Every time someone said no, she was building, without knowing it, the resilience that would define her entire career. Steve Jobs was removed from Apple in 1985, not laid off, not reassigned. Removed from the company he had co-founded, the company he had shaped from nothing into a cultural force. For most people, that level of public rejection of their identity and work would be a permanent wound. For Jobs, it became a redirection. He founded NeXT Computer, which stretched his technical and organizational capabilities in ways Apple had not. He then acquired and led Pixar, which gave him an entirely different perspective on creativity, storytelling, and what audiences actually want. When he returned to Apple a decade later, he brought with him a depth of experience and perspective that he could only have gained by going away. The company he returned to lead reached heights that would not have been possible without the journey that the original setback forced him to take. The setback was not the obstacle, it was the path. These are not stories reserved for exceptional people. They are fully expressed versions of what resilience looks like when it is built deliberately and deployed consistently. The 5 components of your resilience blueprint are not abstract ideas. They are the specific practices that produced those outcomes. Each challenge you face and absorb and learn from is strengthening the exact infrastructure these principles are designed to build. Your blueprint is now in place. Begin building it today. Chapter 2: Mastering Stress Before It Masters You. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Stress is not your enemy. Stress is a biological mechanism that evolved over millions of years specifically to help you survive difficult circumstances. When you feel stressed, your heart rate increases to pump more blood to your muscles. Your breathing quickens to oxygenate your bloodstream. Your focus narrows to concentrate your cognitive resources on the immediate problem. Your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to sharpen your alertness and prepare you for action. In the context for which it evolved, a physical threat with a clear resolution, stress is one of the most sophisticated and effective performance systems in biology. The problem is not stress. The problem is chronic, unresolved, accumulated stress that never finds its natural conclusion and so never turns off. That is the version that is slowly dismantling you, and it is the version this chapter is designed to address. A 2023 survey by the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor found that 62% of those surveyed reported experiencing high levels of stress, with 41% saying it had negatively affected the quality of their decisions. That last number deserves attention, not their mood, not their energy levels. The actual quality of the decisions they were making about the things that mattered most to them. Stress was degrading their judgment, and they were largely living with the consequences without understanding the cause. The effects of chronic, unmanaged stress are not subtle. Physically, they include increased risk of cardiovascular disease, a weakened immune system, and severely disrupted sleep. Psychologically, they include elevated rates of anxiety, depression, and the specific exhaustion of burnout, which is not ordinary tiredness but a state in which your capacity to care about things you once cared about has been genuinely eroded. Cognitively, chronic stress impairs working memory, reduces creative thinking, and narrows the range of solutions your mind generates when facing problems. In your relationships, it reduces your patience, your empathy, and your ability to give other people what they need from you because your system is already operating at or beyond its capacity. Understanding this is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to give you the gravity to treat stress management as the serious, high-stakes practice it actually is. Not a luxury, not a personal indulgence. A performance requirement, a health imperative, and a prerequisite for being the kind of person you want to be for the people in your life who need you. Let us build your stress management system with 4 research-backed strategies that work in the real world. The first is progressive muscle relaxation, known as PMR. This technique operates on a simple but powerful principle. Your mind and your body are in constant bidirectional communication. When your mind is under stress, your body holds tension. And when your body holds tension, your mind reads it as evidence that there is still something to be stressed about, which perpetuates the cycle. PMR interrupts that loop by deliberately addressing the physical side of the equation. The practice involves systematically tensing and then releasing different muscle groups throughout your body in a structured sequence. When you do this, you release the accumulated physical tension that stress has deposited in your muscles, often without your awareness, and you send a clear physiological signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed and the stress response can be downregulated. To practice PMR, find a quiet place to sit or lie down comfortably. Begin with your toes. Tense them as tightly as you can, hold for 5 full seconds, then release the tension completely and suddenly. Pay deliberate attention to the contrast between the feeling of tension and the feeling of release. That contrast is the practice. Move progressively upward through your feet, calves, thighs, abdomen, hands, forearms, upper arms, shoulders, neck, and face, applying the same tense and release cycle to each group. The full sequence takes about 15 minutes. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that people who practiced PMR for 15 minutes daily reported a 28% reduction in perceived stress levels after just 4 weeks. That is a substantial result from a remarkably small time investment. The second strategy is mindfulness-based stress reduction, widely known as MBSR. Developed by John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical School in the late 1970s, MBSR has since been validated across hundreds of clinical and organizational studies and represents one of the most comprehensively researched behavioral health interventions in existence. The program combines mindfulness meditation, body awareness practices, and gentle yoga into a structured curriculum typically delivered over 8 weeks. The key components include body scan meditation, in which you move your attention slowly through your entire body, noticing sensations without judgment. Sitting meditation, in which you practice sustained, non-reactive attention to your breath and the present moment. Hatha yoga, which combines movement, breath, and awareness, and informal mindfulness practices, the habit of bringing present moment, non-judgmental attention to ordinary daily activities. Together, these practices train your nervous system to respond to stressors with greater equanimity rather than automatic reactivity. They teach you to notice what is happening without being immediately swept away by it, which creates the fraction of a second of space between stimulus and response that makes all the difference. To begin, start with 5 to 10 minutes of daily mindfulness practice and build from there. Consider enrolling in a formal 8-week MBSR course for the most structured and comprehensive introduction. Research published in 2023 showed that people who completed an MBSR program experienced a 35% reduction in stress-related symptoms and reported meaningfully improved decision-making. When you train your mind to be genuinely present rather than perpetually bracing for the next problem, you think more clearly, react more wisely, and lead more effectively. The third strategy is physical activity integration. Exercise is one of the most profoundly effective stress management interventions available, and unlike most interventions, it improves essentially every system it touches simultaneously. When you exercise, your brain releases endorphins, which create a direct mood-lifting effect. It reduces circulating cortisol, the primary stress hormone, and accelerates its clearance from your bloodstream. It improves sleep quality, which in turn improves emotional regulation the following day. It enhances cognitive function by increasing blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning. And it builds a physiological resilience that carries directly into your psychological state, because a body that is regularly challenged and recovered from that challenge is a body that communicates to your mind that you are capable of handling difficulty. The key is not to find hours you do not have. It is to integrate movement into the life you already lead. Walking as a mode of transportation, meeting, or reflection. Desk exercises and standing intervals built into the architecture of your workday. Short, intense micro workouts of 10 to 15 minutes that require no commute and no equipment. These accumulate in meaningful ways. A 2023 study found that people who engaged in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, which is roughly 20 minutes per day, reported 40% lower stress levels and 25% higher productivity than those who did not. Movement is not a luxury you earn by having your stress under control. It is one of the primary mechanisms by which your stress gets under control. The fourth strategy reframes time management as a psychological tool rather than simply a productivity system. The way you structure your time determines, in very concrete ways, how much cognitive and emotional load you carry at any given moment. The most common time management failures that amplify stress are multitasking, which the research consistently shows degrades quality and increases mental fatigue significantly. Perfectionism, which prevents completion and creates endless, exhausting rework loops. Poor prioritization, which generates the chronic feeling of being perpetually behind. And overcommitment, which creates obligations you cannot fulfill without damaging either your work or your relationships or your health. The most effective single antidote to all of these is time blocking, dividing your day into dedicated blocks, each assigned to a specific task or category of work, and then protecting those blocks as if they were the most important appointments in your schedule. When you time block, you make one clear decision about what you are doing and then execute it, without the constant background processing of wondering what you should be working on instead. That background processing is a massive and underappreciated source of chronic low-grade stress. Most people have lived with it for so long they have stopped noticing it as stress and simply accept it as the normal texture of their days. Time blocking interrupts it. A 2023 survey by Atlassian found that people who consistently used time blocking reported a 37% increase in productivity and a 29% decrease in work-related stress. The structure itself is calming. Order reduces the cortisol that chaos generates. These four strategies have been tested in conditions as demanding as any you will face. Sarah Chen, founder of the AI startup TechInnovate, watched her team grow from 5 to 50 people in 18 months, a pressure environment that was creating measurable damage to her performance and her well-being. She implemented daily mindfulness practice, rigorous time blocking, and consistent physical movement as a deliberately designed response. The results were concrete: a 45% reduction in self-reported stress levels, a 30% increase in employee satisfaction, and a 22% improvement in quarterly revenue. Her internal discipline translated directly into organizational results. Marcus Lim, CEO of the sustainable packaging company EcoSolutions, was navigating simultaneous regulatory complexity and rapid market expansion. He adopted progressive muscle relaxation as a daily practice, restructured his commute to include active movement, and implemented strict email management and delegation strategies to reduce cognitive overload. His outcomes were equally clear: a 38% decrease in cortisol levels, a 25% improvement in sleep quality, and an 18% increase in team productivity. Both of these people improved their external results by investing in their internal systems first. Now it is your turn to design a stress management system that is built for your actual life. Begin with honest assessment. Keep a journal for 1 week, noting what triggers your stress, how intense the response is, how long it lasts, and how it affects your behavior and the people around you. That awareness is itself a form of power because you cannot manage what you have not yet clearly seen. Then choose 2 or 3 of the strategies in this chapter that genuinely resonate with you and start small. Consistency at a small scale produces far more lasting change than intensity applied occasionally. Protect the time you have allocated for these practices. Inform the people around you what you are doing and why. Consider finding an accountability partner. Use apps like Headspace or Calm to support your mindfulness practice. Review your progress after 2 weeks and adjust where needed. Gradually expand your system as each new practice stabilizes into habit. And carry this with you as the philosophical foundation of everything in this chapter. The goal is not to eliminate stress. That is not possible, and it is not even desirable. Some stress is exactly what you need. It sharpens focus, activates energy, and signals that something genuinely matters to you. The goal of stress mastery is to ensure that you are the one deciding how much stress you carry, how long you carry it, and what you do with it. Not to be passively overwhelmed by it, but to actively use it as the remarkable performance tool it was always designed to be. Chapter 3: The Science and Practice of a Genuinely Positive Mind. There is a version of positivity that is shallow and fragile and ultimately counterproductive. It is the version that insists everything is fine when it is not, that replaces honest engagement with forced cheerfulness, that treats any acknowledgement of difficulty as weakness. That version does not work. It collapses the moment real pressure arrives because it was never built on anything solid. This chapter is not about that kind of positivity. It is about the evidence-based, neurologically grounded, genuinely powerful kind of positive mindset that psychologists have been studying rigorously for decades. The kind that makes you more capable, not less honest. The kind that expands your thinking rather than narrowing it. The kind that is a competitive advantage in every arena of life. The scientific case begins with Dr. Martin Seligman, whose work at the University of Pennsylvania launched the field of positive psychology in the late 1990s. Seligman had spent his early career studying learned helplessness, the state in which repeated uncontrollable negative experiences cause people to stop trying to change their circumstances even when change becomes possible. He eventually asked the inverse question: what produces learned flourishing? What are the psychological conditions under which human beings consistently perform at their best, sustain that performance over time, and report genuine well-being alongside their achievement? The findings of positive psychology are substantial and consistent. People with a genuinely positive mindset recover from setbacks faster, generate more creative solutions to problems, maintain higher quality relationships, demonstrate greater persistence in the face of difficulty, and report significantly higher overall life satisfaction. A 2023 study found that people with a positive mindset were 42% more likely to overcome significant challenges and 37% more likely to report high job satisfaction. These are not small effects. The mechanism through which positivity produces these outcomes was clarified by psychologist Barbara Fredrickson, whose broaden and build theory is one of the most important contributions to behavioral science in the past 30 years. Fredrickson demonstrated experimentally that positive emotions do something specific to your cognition. They broaden your thought-action repertoire. When you are in a negative emotional state, your cognitive field literally narrows. You see fewer options. You generate fewer solutions. Your attention contracts around the immediate threat, and your thinking becomes reactive and rigid. When you cultivate positive emotions, the opposite happens. Your cognitive field expands. You see more possibilities, generate more creative responses, engage with problems in more flexible and innovative ways, and build the kind of collaborative relationships that produce outcomes beyond what any individual could achieve alone. Over time, these expanded engagements help you accumulate lasting personal resources, physical, intellectual, social, and psychological, that continue to serve you long after the original emotion has passed. The positive emotion is not the end point. It is the trigger for a virtuous cycle of development that compounds across years and decades. Now let us build the practice layer by layer. Gratitude is the most accessible entry point into a positive mindset, and it is far more powerful than its simplicity suggests. The practice works by deliberately redirecting your attentional system. Human beings evolved a powerful negativity bias. Your brain is wired to notice, remember, and dwell on negative events far more intensely than positive ones. From a survival standpoint, this makes perfect sense. A threat ignored could kill you. A pleasure ignored was merely a missed opportunity. But in a modern context, this same bias generates a chronic, distorted perception of your own life, one in which difficulties are overweighted and genuinely good things are processed quickly and forgotten. Gratitude journaling directly counteracts this bias. Begin each day by writing down 3 specific things you are grateful for. Not my health as a vague gesture, but I am grateful that I slept well last night and woke up without pain. Not my friends generically, but I am grateful that Marcus called me yesterday and listened for 45 minutes without offering a single piece of unsolicited advice. Specificity is the mechanism. The more detailed and particular your gratitude, the more completely your attention is redirected toward the concrete reality of what is present and good in your life. Write at least 3 times per week, because research suggests this is the minimum threshold to produce measurable changes in your baseline mood and stress levels. A 2023 study in the International Journal of Wellbeing found that people who practiced gratitude journaling for 8 weeks reported a 31% increase in life satisfaction and a 28% decrease in perceived stress, both outcomes from a single, simple daily habit. A complementary practice is the gratitude walk. Take 10 minutes, step outside, or simply walk the perimeter of wherever you are, and mentally list everything you are genuinely grateful for as you move. This practice layers the mood-lifting effects of physical movement on top of the cognitive reorientation of gratitude, producing a combined effect on mood and energy that is greater than either practice alone. It is also one of the most effective ways to break a negative thought spiral, because it forces your attention to move and your body to engage, both of which interrupt the rumination that keeps negative mental states locked in place. Visualization is a practice with a long scientific pedigree and a reputation that has unfortunately been tarnished by association with superficial self-help culture. When used correctly, it is a genuine and powerful cognitive tool. What visualization does neurologically is activate the same neural pathways as actual experience. When you vividly imagine performing a skill, your motor cortex fires in the same patterns as when you physically perform it. When you vividly imagine achieving a goal, your brain begins to encode the emotional, sensory, and motivational landscape of that achievement in ways that make it recognizable and pursuable when real opportunities arise. To practice visualization effectively, find a quiet space and close your eyes. Take several slow, deep breaths. Then imagine in full sensory detail a significant goal you are working toward as if it has already been achieved. What do you see in that moment? What do you hear? What does it feel like in your body? The specific sensation of having done something meaningful and difficult. Hold that image for 5 to 10 minutes, fully inhabiting it, then slowly return and write down any insights or action steps that emerged. Practice this daily, ideally in the morning. A 2023 study found that people who regularly practiced visualization reported 27% higher goal achievement rates than those who did not. Affirmations, when built correctly, are not wishful thinking. They are a deliberate cognitive intervention designed to counter the steady stream of self-limiting narrative that most people carry with them without awareness. The average person's inner monologue contains a significant proportion of self-critical, self-doubting, and self-limiting statements that operate largely below conscious attention and shape behavior in invisible ways. Affirmations work by introducing clear, specific, positive counter-narratives that gradually shift the baseline tone of that inner conversation. To make them effective, they must be personal and specific to what you are actually working on. They must be written in present tense, because present tense creates a sense of current reality that future tense does not. They must be genuinely believable to you, because an affirmation your mind immediately rejects as absurd will not produce any useful effect. And they must be action-oriented, framing what you are capable of doing rather than simply what you hope to feel. Two strong examples. I am someone who faces difficulty with clarity and responds with purpose, and my capacity to handle pressure grows stronger with every challenge I navigate. Repeat them daily. Looking at yourself in a mirror while doing so adds a visual component that research suggests meaningfully increases their effectiveness. Your environment is constantly shaping your mindset at a level below conscious awareness. The people you spend the most time with, the conversations you regularly participate in, the attitudes and energy you are surrounded by every day, all of these are inputs that your brain is processing and incorporating. Choosing your environment deliberately is one of the most powerful things you can do for your long-term psychological well-being. Seek mentors who have achieved what you aspire to and who have maintained their health and integrity in the process. Their guidance and perspective can cut through confusion that you have no way of resolving from inside your own limited vantage point. A 2023 survey found that people with mentors were 43% more likely to maintain a positive outlook during difficult periods than those without. Peer communities are equally important. Join or create a regular gathering of people who are doing difficult work, who will meet you with honesty rather than just encouragement, and who celebrate genuine progress rather than performance. A 2023 study found that people who participated in regular peer group meetings reported 35% higher optimism and 29% lower burnout. The consistent experience of being genuinely understood and supported recalibrates your baseline emotional state over time in ways that no solo practice can fully replicate. Positive psychology offers two specific evidence-based exercises that deserve a place in your practice. The first is the 3 good things exercise. At the end of each day, write down 3 specific good things that happened. For each one, answer 3 questions. Why did this happen? What does it mean to you? And how can you create more of it? This exercise is powerful because it trains your attention to actively seek positive causation, to look for what is working and understand why, which directly counters the negativity bias by making positive events not just noticed but analyzed and understood. A 2023 study found that people who practiced this exercise for 2 weeks reported a 25% increase in life satisfaction and a 30% decrease in symptoms of depression. The second is the best possible self-exercise. Spend 15 minutes writing about your best possible future self in full, vivid detail. Imagine that things have gone as well as they realistically could. You have done the work, made the hard choices, developed the capabilities you wanted to develop. Describe specifically what that version of you looks like, how they think, what they do, and who they are to the people around them. This practice increases optimism and clarity of direction in ways that are measurable. A 2023 study found that regular practitioners reported 33% higher optimism and 28% clearer goal direction than those who did not. Even with all of this operating, negative thoughts will arrive. They are a permanent feature of being human, not a sign that your practice is failing. The skill is not in preventing them, but in responding to them without being defined by them. When a negative thought appears, identify it clearly and name it without judgment. Challenge it by asking whether it is entirely accurate, whether you are catastrophizing, whether you are treating a possibility as a certainty. Reframe it in a more balanced way that acknowledges the difficulty without amplifying it beyond what the evidence supports. Then take action based on the reframed perspective. Practice this consistently. Over time, it becomes increasingly automatic, and the default tone of your inner life gradually shifts from defensive to constructive. Chapter 4: Forging Unshakable Mental Toughness. Mental toughness is what everything in this session has been building toward. It is the end state of resilience trained to mastery, stress managed with discipline, and a positive mindset maintained under genuine pressure. It is the quality that distinguishes people who perform at their best precisely when conditions are at their worst. And it is the most misunderstood concept in the entire field of human performance. Most people imagine mental toughness as a kind of armored stoicism, an absence of feeling, a blank-faced endurance of whatever life delivers. That is not what it is. Mental toughness, in its scientifically validated form, is the capacity to perform consistently under pressure, to maintain focus when distractions multiply, to bounce back from setbacks without being permanently diminished by them, and to hold your commitment to what matters most even when everything around you is encouraging abandonment. It is not the absence of doubt or fear. It is the trained ability to function in the presence of both. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Business Venturing found that people with high levels of mental toughness were 47% more likely to successfully navigate major crises and 39% more likely to achieve consistent progress year over year compared to those with lower mental toughness scores. Those numbers hold across contexts far beyond business. Athletes, surgeons, military personnel, parents navigating family crises, students persisting through years of demanding education, all of them show the same pattern. Mental toughness is one of the strongest predictors of sustained performance and well-being across the full range of human endeavors. And it is built, not inherited. Mental toughness is structured around four components, known in the performance psychology literature as the 4Cs: control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. Each one is distinct, each one is trainable, and together they form an integrated system in which strengthening any one component makes all the others more effective. Control is the first C, and it is foundational. In the context of mental toughness, control does not mean controlling everything that happens to you, which is neither possible nor desirable. It means maintaining composure in high-stress situations and holding onto your belief in your ability to influence outcomes, even when circumstances feel chaotic. This is the direct opposite of learned helplessness, the psychological state that develops when repeated experiences of uncontrollable difficulty convince a person that their actions do not matter. Learned helplessness is one of the most psychologically damaging states a human being can inhabit, and it is surprisingly easy to drift into when life delivers repeated difficulty without visible reward. Countering it requires deliberate practice. Mindfulness meditation is one of the most effective tools for building the emotional regulation that control requires. The ability to feel the heat of a high-pressure situation without having your cognitive function degraded by it. Mel Robbins' 5-second rule offers a simpler but equally effective intervention for moments of hesitation. Count backward from 5 to 1 and then act. The counting interrupts the overthinking loop and replaces it with momentum, which is often all that is needed to break the paralysis that stress induces. Developing contingency plans for the scenarios you most fear is a third powerful control-building practice. When you have already thought through how you would respond to a significant setback, the setback loses some of its capacity to destabilize you because you are meeting it with a prepared mind rather than encountering it for the first time. Commitment, the second C, is the quality that sustains your effort through the long middle of any meaningful pursuit. It is easy to be committed at the beginning when energy is high and possibilities feel unlimited. It is easy to be committed near the end when the finish line is visible. The real test of commitment is in the middle when the initial enthusiasm has fully dissipated, the difficulty is completely clear, and the end is still not visible. This is where most people stop. People with developed commitment do not stop here, not because they feel differently, but because they have built the internal structure that keeps them moving regardless of what they feel. To build your commitment, use the SMART goal-setting framework to create objectives that are specific enough to know exactly what you are aiming at and measurable enough to know whether you are progressing. Vague aspirations produce vague commitment. Precise goals produce precise, actionable dedication. Implement implementation intentions by specifying not just what you will do, but when, where, and how you will do it. Research by psychologist Peter Gallwitzer has consistently shown that adding this level of specific planning to your goals significantly increases the likelihood that you will follow through. And practice daily visualization of your goals already achieved, because the emotional connection between your present self and your envisioned future is one of the most powerful drivers of sustained commitment in existence. Challenge, the third C, is the orientation that transforms the meaning of difficulty. Every person who faces a hard situation makes a rapid, often unconscious assessment. Is this a threat or an opportunity? People with an undeveloped challenge orientation tend to categorize difficulty as threat. This activates a defensive psychological posture that is protective but limiting. It reduces risk-taking, narrows thinking, reduces creativity, and generates a chronic low-level anxiety about what might go wrong next. People with a developed challenge orientation tend to categorize difficulty as opportunity, a chance to learn something, develop a capability, demonstrate something to themselves, or find a solution that will make them more capable in the future. This orientation does not make difficulty feel easy. It makes difficulty feel meaningful, which changes everything. To develop the challenge orientation, practice reframing setbacks using the growth mindset framework. Ask explicitly what this difficulty is teaching you, what capability it is forcing you to develop, what it is revealing about the next step in your development. Implement the challenge skill balance concept from flow psychology, which means deliberately seeking out tasks that stretch your abilities without completely overwhelming them. This is the zone where both peak performance and deep development simultaneously occur. And practice intentional discomfort on a regular basis, doing hard things not because they are immediately necessary, but because building the evidence base that you can handle difficulty is itself one of the most valuable things you can do. Confidence, the fourth C, is the bedrock on which the other three stand. Without it, control erodes under sustained pressure. Commitment collapses when things get genuinely hard. And the challenge orientation retreats into threat assessment when you stop trusting your ability to handle what you might find. Confidence in this context is not arrogance or bravado. It is a grounded, evidence-based belief in your own capability, built on accurate assessment of what you have actually done and what you have actually learned. To build it, use deliberate positive self-talk grounded in specific evidence. Not "I am amazing, but I have navigated situations this difficult before and found a way through." Keep a confidence log, a running record of specific challenges you have overcome, problems you have solved, skills you have developed, moments in which you showed up at your best when it was hardest to do so. Review it regularly, especially when doubt is loudest. The log is not self-promotion. It is an accurate record that counters the distorted narrative that difficulty constructs about your limitations. Invest in both seeking and providing mentorship, because both roles deepen your sense of capability and place you within a community of growth. Beyond the 4Cs, two additional engines drive mental toughness in ways that compound everything else. The first is grit, defined by Angela Duckworth as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Grit is mental toughness stretched across time, the quality that keeps you going not just through a single difficult moment, but through the sustained difficulty of an entire demanding life measured in years and decades. To cultivate grit, begin with your why. Not the surface level why that sounds good in conversation, but the deep why that is still true at midnight when the work is not going well and the obstacles are piling up. The deeper your connection to why what you are doing matters, the harder it is for difficulty to talk you out of continuing. Practice deliberate, focused effort on what is most important, resisting the pull towards scattered activity that creates busyness without progress. Embrace the philosophy of marginal gains, the understanding that small, consistent improvements in multiple areas compound into significant advantages over time. A 1% improvement today means nothing in isolation. Applied daily for 5 years, it produces a version of you that is unrecognizable compared to where you started. A 2023 study found that people who scored high on measures of grit were 35% more likely to persist through major setbacks than those with lower scores. Passion and perseverance are not traits you either have or lack. They are practices you either engage in or neglect. The second engine is mental contrasting, a technique developed by psychologist Gabriel Oettingen that addresses one of the most insidious hidden failure modes of ambition: blind optimism. Positive thinking has genuine power, as this session has documented carefully. But positive thinking without realistic assessment of obstacles can actually undermine motivation by creating a premature psychological sense of having already succeeded, which releases the tension that drives you toward actually succeeding. Mental contrasting corrects for this by pairing aspirational visualization with honest obstacle identification. First, vividly visualize your desired outcome in full sensory detail. Then, honestly identify the specific obstacles that could realistically prevent you from achieving it. Then, for each obstacle, develop at least 2 specific strategies to overcome it before you encounter it. Set aside 15 minutes each week for this process. A 2023 study found that people who regularly practiced mental contrasting were 29% more likely to achieve their near-term goals than those who engaged in positive visualization alone. Aspiration combined with honest planning is more powerful than either alone, and that combination is the precise formula that separates dreaming from doing. Just as physical strength requires progressive resistance, mental toughness requires deliberate exposure to difficulty. You can systematically accelerate this process through what we might call mental workouts, practices that have no immediate practical payoff but build the psychological capacity that makes everything else possible. Cold exposure, whether cold showers or more intensive cold water immersion, trains your nervous system to maintain composure and continue functioning under physical discomfort. The discipline built in tolerating cold extends into every other context where you face difficulty, because it builds the direct experience of choosing not to escape from something unpleasant. Periodic fasting builds the specific experience of tolerating discomfort without immediately acting to relieve it. In a culture of instant gratification, This is a profoundly countercultural practice with profound psychological benefits. Public speaking, whether in formal settings or in deliberate low-stakes conversations with unfamiliar people, builds confidence through repeated exposure to the fear of judgment and the discovery that surviving it does not kill you. Physical challenges, whether long-distance running, demanding athletic pursuits, or difficult physical feats, build the mental stamina that translates directly into every other domain of performance. There is a reason that many of the most effective people in demanding fields maintain rigorous physical training. The mental discipline it builds carries everywhere. And rejection therapy, the deliberate practice of putting yourself in situations where you might be told no, desensitizes you to the fear of rejection and trains the resilience to continue pursuing what you want regardless of the social discomfort involved. A 2023 survey found that people who regularly engaged in at least 3 forms of adversity training reported 38% higher mental toughness and 42% better stress management than those who did not. 2 lives demonstrate what all of this looks like under maximum real-world pressure. Elon Musk's journey with SpaceX represents one of the most extraordinary demonstrations of mental toughness in modern history. SpaceX suffered 3 consecutive failed rocket launches. Each one represented enormous financial cost, significant reputational exposure, and an enormous personal stake for Musk personally. After the 3rd failure, the company had enough funding remaining for a single additional launch attempt. If that attempt failed, SpaceX was finished. Most people facing those odds after 3 consecutive failures would have concluded that the evidence was clear and that continuing was irrational. Musk did not. He maintained control by staying deeply involved in every technical detail of the 4th launch rather than retreating from the difficulty. He demonstrated commitment by investing his own remaining personal capital when external funding was exhausted. He maintained the challenge orientation by keeping his attention focused on the possibility of success rather than the probability of failure. And he maintained confidence in his vision even as the evidence around him pointed elsewhere. When the 4th launch succeeded, SpaceX secured a $1.6 billion contract with NASA. The mental toughness that produced that outcome was not accidental. It was the product of a mind deliberately built to function under precisely that kind of pressure. Sarah Blakely founded Spanx with no fashion industry experience, no manufacturing contacts, and an idea that the established industry did not believe in. She bootstrapped the company and maintained full ownership through the period when it would have been easiest to trade control for resources, demonstrating the control dimension of mental toughness in a context where financial pressure was intense. She heard repeated rejections from manufacturers and kept going, demonstrating commitment. She saw the challenge of disrupting an entrenched industry not as an impossibility, but as an underexploited opening, demonstrating the challenge orientation. And she built her confidence not by waiting for external validation, but by taking persistent action through cold calling and relentless self-promotion until the results became their own validation. Her mental toughness built Spanx into a billion-dollar company and made her the youngest self-made female billionaire in history at the time. The 4Cs were not abstract principles for Blakely. They were the lived operating system of her daily choices. To build mental toughness systematically, incorporate 5 practical exercises into your regular life. The 5-minute journal is a daily structured practice with morning and evening prompts designed to reinforce clear intention, positive orientation, and honest self-reflection. Practiced consistently, it builds the discipline of daily mental maintenance that mental toughness requires as its substrate. The 100-day challenge is a commitment to pursue a single meaningful goal with daily action for 100 consecutive days. The value is not exclusively in the goal achieved, though that often happens. The value is in the direct experience of sustained commitment, which is the most powerful evidence you can gather about your own capacity for perseverance. The Stoic Evening Review, drawn from the practice of Marcus Aurelius and other Stoic philosophers, involves asking yourself at day's end three clean questions. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? And what will I do differently tomorrow? This practice builds self-awareness and the habit of honest self-assessment that mental toughness requires. The comfort zone challenge means deliberately doing one uncomfortable thing each week, whether a difficult conversation, a new skill, a physical challenge, or a social risk. The accumulation of these voluntary acts of discomfort builds the evidence that you can handle more than you currently believe, which is the foundation of genuine confidence. And resilience scenario planning means regularly imagining in detail how you would respond to the specific difficult circumstances you most fear, rehearsing your composure before the test arrives so that you meet it as a prepared mind rather than a surprised one. Measure your mental toughness regularly. Use the Mental Toughness Questionnaire 48, the MTQ 48, which provides validated scoring across all 4CS components and allows you to track your development over time. Keep a resilience journal. Set measurable goals related to mental toughness and track your performance against them. Seek regular feedback from trusted people who can see your patterns more clearly than you can from the inside. The mental toughness equation is worth holding in your mind. Mental toughness equals the sum of control, commitment, challenge, and confidence, multiplied by grit and perseverance. The multiplication is the key structural insight. Grit and perseverance do not simply add to the system, they amplify every component simultaneously. The whole is synergistic. You are not building isolated qualities. You are building an integrated architecture that makes you more capable in every dimension as each element develops. Chapter 5: Measuring Your Progress and Sustaining the Journey. Everything you have encountered in this session only becomes real through consistent practice, honest measurement, and patient, sustained attention over time. Resilience, stress mastery, positive psychology, and mental toughness are not one-time achievements. They are ongoing capacities, always either growing or eroding depending on whether you are actively tending to them. This final chapter is about making that tending sustainable, intelligent, and genuinely effective across the long arc of a life well lived. Begin with an honest baseline. Most people who want to improve their psychological well-being never establish where they are starting from, which means they cannot know whether they are making progress and often abandon practices that are actually working because they have no reference point for comparison. Take standardized resilience assessments like the Connor-Davidson Resilience Scale or the Brief Resilience Scale. These are validated instruments with established norms that give you a quantitative sense of your current resilience capacity and a baseline against which to measure future growth. Use stress inventories or dedicated tracking apps to establish your baseline perceived stress levels and identify which contexts, situations, and times of day are most consistently associated with elevated stress in your life. Monitor your goal achievement rate over time, because one of the clearest external indicators of developing inner capacity is an improving ratio between goals set and goals reached. Track your positivity ratio by counting positive and negative interactions and self-directed thoughts over representative days. Barbara Fredrickson's research identifies a 3-to-1 positive to negative ratio as the minimum threshold for flourishing. a state of optimal functioning that goes beyond merely managing to genuinely thriving. Use the MTQ 48 periodically to assess your mental toughness across the four components of the 4CS and identify where focused development effort is most needed. Keep a resilience journal that documents specific challenges, your responses to them, what you learned, and how you would approach similar situations differently in the future. And seek regular feedback from mentors, coaches, and trusted peers, because others often see our patterns, our progress, and our blind spots far more clearly than we can from inside our own experience. Progress in developing these capacities is not linear. It never is with anything worth building. There will be weeks of clear advancement and weeks that feel like regression. There will be periods when every practice comes easily and periods when maintaining any of it feels like a struggle. This is the normal pattern of complex capability development. It is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are doing something genuinely difficult that genuinely matters. The overall trajectory, measured across months and years rather than days and weeks, should show clear upward movement if you're practicing consistently and adjusting intelligently. The measurement tools give you the perspective to see that trajectory even when the immediate experience is discouraging. Here is how to build your ongoing development plan. First, establish your baseline honestly and completely using the tools described above. Second, set specific and measurable goals for each of the four domains: mindset and cognitive reframing, stress management, positive psychology practices, and mental toughness. Write these down. Specificity creates accountability in a way that vague intentions never can. Third, design a daily and weekly schedule that incorporates the key practices from this session in a form that is genuinely sustainable within your actual life, not an idealized version of it. Fourth, identify which of the four domains needs the most immediate attention and weight your schedule accordingly. Fifth, commit to ongoing learning. This field continues to develop, and the best practice today will be refined and improved by future research. Sixth, establish an accountability structure, whether a trusted peer, a professional coach, or a structured self-review process that gives your commitments an external witness. Seventh, schedule monthly and quarterly reviews of your development plan so that you can assess what is working, adjust what is not, and recalibrate your goals as your capacity grows. Eighth, keep increasing the challenge. Any capacity maintained at a fixed level will plateau and eventually decline. Progressive challenge is what produces progressive development. Ninth, share what you are learning with the people around you, because teaching accelerates your own integration of what you have learned and contributes to the people you care about. And 10th, acknowledge your progress. The development of inner capacity is often invisible from the outside and easy to discount from the inside because it does not produce the kind of visible, countable evidence that external achievements do. Do not discount it. The capacity you are building is the foundation on which every external achievement rests. For reference, your integrated resilience development system works across four parallel tracks. Mindset development is built through growth mindset practices and cognitive reframing, measured with mindset assessment questionnaires. Stress management is built through progressive muscle relaxation, mindfulness-based stress reduction, physical activity, and time blocking, measured with the perceived stress scale. Positivity is cultivated through gratitude journaling, visualization, affirmations, peer and mentor support, and the 3 good things and best possible self exercises, measured with the positive and negative affect schedule. And mental toughness is developed through the 4CS, grit cultivation, mental contrasting, adversity training, and the 5 systematic exercises, measured with the mental toughness questionnaire 48. There is one more thing worth saying, and it is perhaps the most important of everything in this session. Building resilience, mastering stress, cultivating a positive mind, and forging mental toughness are not things you do to make life easier. Life will remain difficult. The world will remain demanding. People will continue to disappoint you. Circumstances will continue to shift, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be will continue to feel uncomfortably wide at times. What you are building is not an escape from any of that. What you are building is the capacity to meet all of that with more of yourself rather than less, to show up more fully under pressure rather than less, to give more to the people and the purposes that matter most to you precisely because you have learned to sustain yourself through the difficulty that being alive in a challenging world requires. That capacity is not a gift. It is a practice. It is available to every human being willing to build it with the same seriousness they bring to anything else they genuinely care about. And the building starts now with whatever is hardest for you today, with whatever practice you have been telling yourself you do not have time for, with whatever single step moves you from reading or listening to actually doing. Your resilience is your greatest asset. Nurture it, strengthen it, measure it, protect it. And let it carry you toward the kind of life you are genuinely capable of building, one that holds under pressure, one that grows through difficulty, one that matters in the ways that matter most. This has been Stress Mastery Blueprint, a Brainpower audiobook session. Thank you for listening.
Want the written version? Grab the PDF for half a cup of coffee, $2. Link is in the description and the comments.